Well, we are in Lagos now, and let's have a discussion about that viral video. And, well, not just because the video is viral, but because a number of people have raised concerns even before that video. There are those who would say, look, if you are going through, if you're going along the Third Mainland Bridge towards Berger bus stop from Alakpere side, and your windows are all wound down, you may not like the odor you perceive. There are those who have queried that, hey, how about, you know, these heaps? What are we going to do about them and stuff like that? Well, whether or not the Lagos State government is doing anything about it, you're about to find out now, because we have in the studio with us the Commissioner for Environment and Water Resources in Lagos State, Mr. Tokunbo Wahab. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let me begin by saying, we see your work. And this is an honest opinion. When some people have to take difficult decisions, it will affect people, but at the same time, it would look like your best doesn't seem to be cutting it for a good number of people, as much as the effort that is being made. First of all, let's begin with that opinion that Lagos is smelling. I've seen your posts saying that Lagos is not smelling, Lagos is evolving. Please explain.
Thank you very much. You see, let me put this in a context. If you tell me Lagos is smelling, I'll ask you, where do you stay in Lagos? So I'll be able to situate where that narrative is coming from. We are all familiar with Olushosun, the dump site here around Ikeja. And then if you stay around Alimosho, you must be familiar with that one on Igondo Road, Solo Street. We call it Solo Street. What we've done differently is minimize the number of waste going there, and then with a long-term plan to decommission it in the next 18 months. To decommission, you also need to get a proper alternative. And for any growing city like Lagos in the world, where you have the challenges of urbanization and migration combined, you must be able to think outside the box to solve the problem. We generate between 13 and 14,000 tons of waste a day. That is humongous for just Lagos. So, creatively, we've now found a way to minimize, to the barest minimum, the quantum of waste that ends up in our landfill. And by so doing, we now have an arrangement that will give us waste to wealth, where your compost becomes, your organic waste becomes a fertilizer, compost fertilizer. The plastic is recycled to become your dust bin. So we can start giving Lagosians to build a waste disposal culture. It's a culture you have to build, like they do in other climes that are developed. Then you have the one for waste to energy. Then you have the one that companies like Lafarge have said they want the combustible waste for their own factory. So at the end of the day, by the time you segregate all this waste we're talking about, the 14,000 tons of waste, we may end up now having more than 500 tons that will end up in our landfills. That takes care of waste management. Now, we have a PSP arrangement that has been in place for almost 2 decades. With the PSP arrangement, we've allowed private sector come and invest in the waste collection process. LOMA will be the regulator. But we've also realized that there are challenges in that PSP structure because people don't like paying for service. They rather want to free ride the system. So what we've said to Lagosians, if you know you are in an area where your waste is not being picked up on a weekly basis, kindly let LOMA know. LOMA now have over 200 trucks, functional trucks, new, that will intervene in the interim like a stopgap. And by so doing, they will cut away the waste. Then they will find and investigate what happened to the PSP operators. There are also times when a PSP truck will have a challenge. Within them, they have an arrangement, they will call out or call one or two other persons to cover that route. By and large, these are challenges that comes with an evolving megacity like Lagos.
So I'm coming.
So the the narrative of Lagos is smelling is something that I don't believe in. I don't agree with it. Do we have areas that have offensive odors, like Oluchosun does have during the rainy season? I'll tell you yes. Or if you're driving around Alimosho corridor where you have that solo street that we are decommissioning, I'll tell you, oh yes.
I don't think that's the narrative. I think it's more than that. I understand the landfill areas that you've spoken about, but then there are also, and you just talked about culture. The culture of, you go to virtually any market, the offensive odor is indeed offensive. Go, please name one. And some would say it is expected. But then, we have had situations, I mean, even the same Lagos State has come up with certain market structures or market designs where you enter the place, there is no smell. So, some of those are the things that people experience. Yes, it could be down to the people doing the same thing. Perhaps because there isn't a proper waste disposal system around them, or that they have not picked up that culture. So when you talk about building culture, what's the process?
Let me explain it to you. When people are used to doing things the normal way over time, it takes a while to change that narrative and that culture. And to change it, you must be very strong with your advocacy. And that is what we are doing as a state. And then, once you're doing the advocacy, you also try to dangle this, that there will be consequences, like we've seen.
Help us understand that.
Now, this is a man that came out of his vehicle with his waste to dispose that waste into a public place. Now, how do you explain it to yourself? A rational person wakes up in the morning, takes a waste in a waste bin, and then if we arrest this person, this is the vehicle, if we arrest this person, some persons will blow a dog whistle and call us bigots because we're doing the right thing. Let me also switch in the context for you. There are different kinds of markets. The traditional market you're trying to talk about, I was at one of them 2-3 weeks ago at Oyinbo, myself, leading the advocacy. I was at Idumota some 4-5 weeks ago, myself. I was at Okeari myself. And we told them why they have to change their attitude. And we also told them why we may have to wield the big stick. Because people need to behave differently. And they also explain their own challenges. So it goes beyond collection.
Sorry, what are their challenges?
I'm going to explain it to you. It goes beyond collection. If you put your stock, your waste, on the drainage parts, it's a recipe for crisis, for instance. I was at Oyinbo. They were selling on the covered drainage part. What happens most times? They will fill it up with dirt. And then, when the rain comes, they will blame the government. That was a newly constructed infrastructure around Oyinbo. So I had to explain to each and every one of those old women, we're not here for enforcement. Look at what you are doing here. Does it really make sense with due respect? And they all admitted, no. Okay, we won't come for you today. Just move your ways behind this point. And they agreed. We also want to have a deepened relationship with the local governments. Local governments, don't forget, are in charge of markets. But we are in charge of waste. So there must be a very strong collaboration. And luckily, thankfully in Lagos, we are doing that. But when you find people coming to the States on a daily basis with different culture, you also need to ramp up your advocacy. And let everybody come on board.
I was going to take you up on the perspective that you just raised about local government, the functions that local governments are supposed to perform. We just finished a local government conversation, in Edo State, and there are those who will say maybe Lagos is a little different, but it's similar, it's familiar, because hardly do we hear the voices or see the efforts of local government administrations. I always quote my experience in the Third Republic. The local governments were very, very vibrant and active because you could see their insignia on some vehicles all over the place doing stuff. I also recall growing up as a little lad on Lagos Island, environmental officers went to people's houses to ensure that these things are done. It would seem like those days are gone. and done with?
No, for Lagos, I don't agree with you. In fairness to the local governments, they are doing so much, but we just have to encourage them to do much more. And before the Supreme Court judgment that gave them full autonomy, Lagos had always allowed them to run with their vision. So what we want to do more with them is deepen the collaboration, especially in areas that have to do with drainage. Because we take care of the primary and the secondary collectors. The tertiary, the one that runs through people's houses, are meant to be taken care of by local governments, as well as the market areas. And that conversation is ongoing. Some of them are very cooperative, I will give it to them. Some are not seeing it from the perspective we are coming from. And then the engagement will have to continue. But let's speak about culture. Waste management is a culture. Waste disposal is a culture. You go to some countries, you know, this paper must go to a blue bin. The normal waste will go to your green bin. The combustible ones will go to a black bin. That's a culture that was built over time. And people also know for a fact that it doesn't make sense for me to take my waste and go drop it in the wrong place. Well,
maybe for those people who are doing it at that time, it made some sense. My colleague in Abuja has questions for you as well. Kayla, go ahead.
I've been listening with rapt attention at some of the things that he has been saying. You know, and I do have to give you a perspective from someone who doesn't live in Lagos. I know that sometimes it does feel like, you know, people may be rushing to say things and may come off as a bit offensive. But you've talked about something very important, which is waste management. And I do have to say, as someone who doesn't live in Lagos, there were places that smelled a little strange. Okay, there were places that had very offensive odors. But you know, it all comes down to waste management. And I want you to be able to get your thoughts about what the state is doing different. You've mentioned some, but what are you doing that is out of the box? Because you know, in particular areas like the ones that you've mentioned, the heat is here now. If you have a humidity of 80% in Lagos right now, things will start to cook. You know, and then of course with the rains coming, and we see that recurring every single year. We even saw it last year. What's your office doing differently this year that would make things better for the citizens of Lagos?
Okay, thank you very much. What we are doing differently is to minimize the quantum of waste that ends up on the landfill. And how do we do that? We've had our MOU signed with Jospong. We've had the one that will do with waste to energy, that's harvest waste. We've had one with Lafarge. Lafarge will take the combustible waste and use it for their own factory power. That is what will help us minimize the quantum of the 14,000 waste that used to go to the landfill. Now will be minimized to the barest minimum. Now, the rain is about to come. What are we also doing differently? All year round, we've been maintaining and cleaning up our primary and secondary collectors so that they can be ready for the rains. Then we're also doing advocacy to tell those that are on the lowland areas of Agility, Ajegule, and some areas of Ikorodu that they have to vacate because we are monitoring the water level and they have to leave that area and leave their houses for a while to be safe. That is doing it differently. Also, we are ramping up advocacy. Advocacy in the sense that we're telling people, look, waste culture, you have to take ownership of it. And then we're also doing something differently. There are consequences attached to bad behaviors now. If you behave badly by taking your waste like the man you saw in the video, and we nab you, we take you to court. And then we let the court determine if what you're doing is in conformity with the extant laws of the land. So a lot of things are going on at the moment. But I'll tell Lagosians this. If you tell me you pass by an area, for instance, and it doesn't smell well, I'll ask you, tell me the area. You used to pass to come to Channels, this Baja area. We had to take it head on, collaborating with Ogun State. People used to defecate in the middle of the median. And it's very repulsive to common sense. But it was a culture they had been used to. And we were consistent with the arrest and the prosecution of those that were doing it. And then we put signs there, you can't defecate here. And then we insisted. After a while, they conformed. And that's what we're doing statewide. Now, don't forget, we have 1,710 public toilets across the state. And for you to have a building plan approval to build a gas or petrol station, you must put a public toilet facility in there. So that is to complement what we have, that is 1,710. We're also planning to deploy 150 across the state again. So the question you ask yourself is, why are people not ready to use those public toilets? But they are comfortable to defecate in the middle of a median
and I'm
at
also
Beja
hearing,
or Oshu, for instance. Right. So that is what we should ask ourselves. And that's what we're trying to change. That's the narrative we're trying to change with the advocacy. But the advocacy will not just come by way of advocacy. There must also be a stick. That's the consequences. You see, all over the world, people...
So, Mr. Wahab, I mean, I want to be able to talk to you a little bit about the people element that you mentioned there. And let me explain. You see that man that left his house and carried the bin and was walking on the express and looking for where to throw it? If he had a disposal mechanism, if he had, like, in parts of it, it's not everywhere. We have the same problems in Abuja, by the way. If he had a bin in front of his house where people come and dispose their bins and then someone comes and picks it up twice a week, I don't think he would enter his car and be driving to the express to throw it into over a bridge. So even though, yes, we do get the fact that many people are recalcitrant, many people do not want to adhere to the laws, but how readily available are these waste disposal mechanisms? Are they on every street? Are people coming to pick up waste every Wednesday? Like in my neighborhood, they pick up the waste every Wednesday and Saturday. So we know to get our waste out and know that it's going to be leaving by Wednesday or Saturday. I want you to speak on the availability of these waste disposal mechanisms for the people, first of all. And then secondly, just so we don't miss out on this, the sewage system and the drainages as the floods come. You know, we've been talking a lot about people throwing dirt into gutters and things like that. What kind of difference are we going to see this year from last year? Because last year we heard the same conversation from the Lagos state government. Oh, we're talking to the people, we're going to prosecute them if they do the wrong things. What's different this year from last year?
Thank you very much. You have that's a cocktail of questions. Let me start with the first one. Now, I said to you, we have a PSP structure. The PSP structure is meant to cut away your waste from your homes and then take them to the transfer loading stations or the landfills. And then we have a LOMA, the regulator. The LOMA, the regulator, is now intervening where PSPs are challenged. So that is what is novel with what we're doing now. And that's like a stopgap measure. Wherever you know, oh, my PSP is not come to pick up my waste, just let LOMA know. LOMA will do the right thing. Take the waste in the interim. But that should not explain why people will leave their homes and take their waste in a vehicle and then go and drop them in a drainage system or on the median. That's for that. Now, what have we done differently with sewage and then rain? In the past 2 years or thereabout, we've ramped up our capacity to keep our channels clean all year round. Not just that, we've constructed so much more channels and collectors than we had before. Now, why are we doing this? Because we know Lagos as a coastal state is below sea level. So, and Lagos has a very small landmass, 5,537 square kilometers of land. A third of it is water. So when it rains heavily, there will be a lockup. A lockup means that your rainwater cannot be discharged into the Atlantic because of the tidal level. So that has to wait for a while before it discharges. So that leads to a bit of flash flooding in some areas. But what we've done is ramp up our own infrastructural provision for the citizens. And then the advocacy that if there is a flash flood, please don't panic. It will ease off once the tidal level drops. It's normal. And then we also try to discourage people from building on wetlands. Wetlands are natural sponge. When it rains heavily, your wetland will take your rainwater and hold them pending when the water level will drop and it will discharge. Okay. For the sewage, we've enabled and encouraged LASWAMO, that's the Waste Management Office, to ramp up its capacity in the past 2 years. And they are doing that very well. And that's why when I hear people say, they are discharging effluent into Odualaro, I laugh. It's born out of ignorance. There is a modular septage pretreatment plant at Odualaro that's being monitored daily. And the effluent discharge from factories are monitored on a regular basis by LASEPA.
Perhaps the issue is that of communication. If people don't know, they're going to fill up the gaps, Mr. Wahab.
But you see, some people can be very mischievous too.
Well, yes, but let's cover the part of communication first. But there is a quick follow-up. You can just do this in about 30 seconds because I want one or two other things to raise with you. Kenna asked about, whether or not the fellow who was, or anyone who's been dropping garbage in different parts of the city have their waste bins with them. I know that Lagos State government distributed some waste bins.
We are still distributing.
Okay. So is it that this man doesn't have it?
Most of them do. Most of them do. Let me tell you what they're trying. They're trying to circumvent payment for PSP. They are trying to circumvent payment for PSP.
How much do PSP collect? Maybe
it depends on the area.
Maybe it's too expensive.
Look, we even bridge it for them. The government bridges it for them. There's a subsidy on it. And that's a different conversation on its own. We are doing a cross-subsidy across the states.
Okay.
So using from those that are very okay to subsidize for those that are not very okay.
Now, just a quick one, because I have one or two other things. A good number of people complain about certain roads in the city, contributing to the defacing of the environment. People who ply through routes like Berger, like Underbridge Ikeja, like Ojuelegba, like even the island, some parts of the island, they say that there is no traffic except the bus stops that people are parking on the highway to pick up passengers and drop passengers. Guess what? We have LASMA officials there. So what is happening? There is hardly any Nigerian going from Lagos into Ogun State, Mowe, and the rest of them, going home in the evening these days that don't encounter this traffic. And the bus stops are always messy.
Let me say this, and I apologize to Lagosians for that. I know they are doing so much to reform LASMA. LASMA is also a microcosm of we as a people. We didn't pick LASMA officials from heaven. We picked them from amongst our people. So it's a reflection of what I spoke about, culture. Why will you have a garage where you choose to be in a hurry, park on the road to drop or pick passengers?
That's the reason we have LASMA. LASMA is not supposed to allow that to happen.
LASMA is meant to enforce more, and I think they are going to do much of that. And I'm doing so much more on that.
Okay. Now, there is something you raised earlier about, people who put their wares on drainage paths. We also know that there are some activities of your ministry in taking care of buildings that are also on drainage paths. I can't imagine the number of court cases you are having to deal with as a result of that, but talk to us about that. This one in particular.
You see, 2 years ago, when I assumed office, I made it clear that we need to holistically solve the problem of flooding in Lagos. And to holistically solve it, you must also go head-on with those that are believing they are above the laws. The laws are very clear. You can't build on the right-of-way for a canal. There must be a setback. You can't build on a wetland. You can't build on an alignment for any of our channels. And we did the right thing by removing those contraventions. But for some persons, it's political. And they dog-whistled, they shouted, but leadership is not about gamesmanship. It's about taking very tough, decisive decisions upcoming. And we continue to do that. And it helped the state with other interventions we did and policies. That, like, for instance, we said we're banning styrofoam. Some persons politicized it, but we stood by it.
Yeah,
and
it goes back. My apologies, Mr. Wahab.
Yeah.
So let
me. You asked a question. Yeah. You asked a question. Let me explain it. This whole thing come together to affect the environment. The role the styrofoam used to play in the clogging of the drainage system had never been seen before because of the nature of styrofoam. When we banned it last year, it was politicized, but we were very resolute. the rain last year, we saw the positive impact of the ban. Now, for removing contraventions, it was a very tough decision. And everywhere we have removed, even to Mende, go there, you see a construction that is going on that alignment.
Okay, just one last one here. You grew up, as I did, and a good number of people, seeing Lagos State Water Corporation very active.
Yes.
Supplying water to, Lake Oceans and all of that. But these days, you really have to scavenge to get water from, public sources. What's up?
Thank you. And I'm going to thank this governor and his deputy for their disposition towards this challenge. And the governor made it very clear. There must be water in Lagos before it leaves in 2027. And the contractor is on site. We were at Advocacy 2 last month with the governor and his deputy and the whole executive of Lagos State to see the work the contractor is doing. The pipe laying is going on to take the raw water from Ogun River into Advocacy 2. Advocacy 2 will give us 70 million gallons of water daily. Advocacy 1 is functional. Iju is functional. Chassis is functional. Between those three, but they give us 25 million gallons a day. They are old. But with Advocacy 2, 70 million will ramp up capacity.
Okay.
So that is ongoing.
We're out of time, but is there a conduit through which people can reach you? Maybe like your social platforms that people can, mention or send you a message. Can people reach you? Will they get responses?
They will get instant responses. I have not changed my numbers.
Okay.
I won't change my numbers.
Okay.
Public service for me is a call to serve. And it's not a means in itself, it's a means to a better life for our people.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Mr. Tokunbo Wahab is Commissioner for the Environment and Water Resources in Lagos State. We truly appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that's the show this morning. We know that you have messages for us on X. Thank you so much. We'll probably open with them tomorrow. Amaya Makinde, have a beautiful rest of your day and a productive week.
Indeed, I am Kayla Megwa. Have a great week ahead.
Welcome to Odibet, the ultimate destination for sports